Hi, I'm David Wilson. I'm not a woodworker, I'm a retired accountant. So this particular exercise of making a bird feeder is something that we can all do with the modicum of woodworking skills. By now you should have the plans that are associated with this build, and all the parts are detailed on there, so we'll follow the plan as it's written. The idea for this bird feeder came when I was living in Bethlehem in Tauranga, and we had a number of tuis that fluttered around the neighbourhood, but none of them came onto our place. So the idea became to use whatever scrap bits I could find around the house, old bits of paint, old pieces of wood, screws out of my reclaimed screw jars, and put something together that would fill the purpose. Looked on YouTube, and there's a huge gap in bird feeders for tuis, nectar feeders in particular, tuis, bellbirds, silver eyes in New Zealand. There's quite a few feeders offshore for hummingbirds and that sort of thing, but not totally applicable here. So what I wanted was a bird feeder that I could load up and really then enjoy watching the birds as they came and sustain themselves during times when maybe there wasn't enough nectar around in the plants on the neighbourhood. Okay, so what we're going to do is make something like this. Now the dimensions may change according to the pieces of wood you have, but that's pretty much the finished article, except that I will be putting a perch across the front for the birds to land on. Now all the parts you need are detailed in the plans, and what I have to say is this is your bird feeder once it's been cut out into the pieces of wood. So it's not a lot, and we need something for the backing. So that's it, pretty much in total, except for some of the fringe bits which really make it work, and we'll get onto those a bit later. So what we have is a roof, two sides, the back, which is the long piece, and two little shelves. And that's the sum total of all the wooden parts. Now what I have here is about 100 by 20 that I managed to pick up at a local sawmill. You could use picket fences, or fence pickets I should say. You could use, I've got some quila on this one that I've painted up. I scavenged from somebody who was building a deck. So the first step we need is two pieces of whatever you're using, and you have to note this one, the timber is a little narrower, so I have used a slightly different design, but we'll get to that and I'll show you the difference. Two pieces with a 45-degree angle cut at each end, at the one end. So they will join together and make a right angle. Sounds simple, and really it is. I have a little demonstration here of another two pieces which we can put together for the sake of this exercise. So if I have a little block of wood and two clamps, I can now put this together, glue and screw, or just glue it if you wish, but there is another alternative. So if we glue that around the edge of, clamp that on the edge of a block of wood, we can get our right angle pretty right. And if you then pre-coat those with no more nails or something like that, then you're good to go, and just put that aside. Tomorrow it'll be pretty tough. But if you're at all worried and you're clumsy like me, you might find it useful to use a small bracket on the inside, and that's what I've done with this one here. It's a softer wood, and you can't even see the little bracket but that's just screwed into the inside like that, and with small screws, and that'll hold the whole thing in place. They're, I don't know, $50 or $1 at Mitre 10, so it's not a big expense in that, but quite worthwhile, and they make the roof particularly highly robust and can be reused on the next one. So if we've made our roof and glued that together and put it away, we need two more pieces. The dimensions are quite clearly on the plans. Two more pieces to form the outside. That's these side panels on the one that I've finished. And the other two are the shelves that hold the bottle and the shelf that holds the cup. Now, if you're at all worried about making true 45-degree angles, there are some easy ways. First of all, the traditional movable set square has a 45-degree setting already built in. So that's that. That one there. Alternatively, I think every handsaw that you can buy at the hardware stores these days has both a set square down this side and a 45-degree angle across the bottom of the handle. So having made our roof, and the only alternative you could do with this to play with it would be to put another 45-degree angle down on here and turn that into more of a chalet effect. But I'm all for doing things with the minimum possible effort. I've used no more nails in the join, and for that there are a dozen different kinds of woodworking glues, exterior glues. As I say, no more nails comes in a whole variety of quick grab, major setting, strong setting ones. And I found the other day in one of the Payless Plastics shops, wood glue for $2 a tube, and it's a builder's glue. So there are alternatives around, real cheap, and they will last quite a long time. So we have the roof, and we have now two more, but these two pieces, which are the sides, and as you can see, each of those has a 45-degree angle on it, and the idea is that it will sit like that. So it all starts coming together once you put the back on. So we have here, this piece is whatever you have left over. If you start off with your 2.5 or 2.8 metre piece of wood, cut the walls and the sides and the walls and the roof and the two platforms out of it, you will end up with something like this. And the reason it's so long is that it can go on a post like this, screw it on. It can go on a fence post. It can go, you can put a post into the ground. You can attach it to the wall of a house. There are a number of ways you can attach it, and as long as you can reach the bottle to change the syrup, renew it, then you can play with the height as well. So I like to leave this as long as possible in one piece, and then when I've got my location sorted out, then I will, if necessary, saw some off. We take the back, and this one is going to fit flush on the back. The reason is it's 100 wide, and that is enough to fit my milk bottle under the lid, or mostly. So it keeps it reasonably sheltered. My other one behind me has built a slightly narrower pieces of decking wood, so I've done that on the outside. If you can see, I'll just point it out with this. It's come up the outside of the roof. Again, it all depends on what you've got if you've got a piece of plywood, you could actually cut exterior ply, marine ply or something like that, some offcuts. Scrounge them off anyone you like. Right, so what I've done here is clamp one of the sides on. I've made sure that it's flush across the back and that I've maintained my angle as best as I can up to the top. So just going to pop a couple of screws in here. You can glue it as well. I'm using chemically treated exterior screws with a reasonably coarse thread. Handy hint, if you are using something like Quila and you're screwing, always drill the holes first. Make them about the same size as the shank of the screw so that only the thread has to cut, and put a bit of soap on the thread before you put it in. That helps to lubricate it, and then it will dry away and the screw will set. So but this is a softer wood, and I'm going to use an impact driver which may be a little noisy. One of the best Christmas presents I was ever given, this little wee Black & Decker electric screwdriver which has got a ton of grunt and is easy to work with because it's light. So here we are, we have one. If we turn it over, we now fix the other. Right, so we'll just do this one freehand. I'm just going to stir a wee starter hole. See, this is soft wood. And so now we have almost the complete body of the bird feeder put together. And it's only now a matter of attaching this roof. Probably the best way of making that attachment is a screw through the top, or just glue it. You can pop some glue along these edges and then just sit that on there overnight. Clamp it if you can. But I'm going to put a screw in it just to hold it in place while we finish the rest of the bird feeder. So now we're all in place, and we can start to talk about the bottle holder and the cup holder. And we have the last two pieces of our pre-cut wood. The plan calls for the two pieces to be identical, and these are they, and that's the way I've made them, except that we do separate them apart. Now, one of the important pieces of equipment I've found is a hole saw. I needed to make a 50mm hole, and this one goes in increments from quite small to quite large, and it's particularly if you can use it with a drill press, it is highly efficient, and if you get a good one it will go through all the different kinds of wood. So we have our two pieces. One of them needs to have a slot cut out, and if we look at our finished one here, we can see this one I've done, and the idea is that when I have got the tube in the bottle and I'm loading it up, I don't have to bring it right up here and try and feed it through. I can just wiggle it through and it sits in. And it sits there quite comfortably. This is the one piece of construction I will be doing in this demonstration. I'm going to take my saw. And that's all there is to that bit. And they have been cut to be about that width, so it's reasonably flush on the outside. That is a relatively straightforward operation to put that one in. I'm going to fix it to the back again with my drill and some screws. So there we now have the bottle holder. As points to the crucial dimensions of this, is the width across here is I've designed it around Puhoi milk 1.5 litre bottles. And there's a reason for that. One is that they're reasonably substantial, and so when you tip them upside down, the vacuum will, and they start to drain into the cup, the vacuum will not collapse the bottle. So good firm ones are important. I did get a light milk Puhoi milk bottle, and the plastic was so thin that when I put it in, it just collapsed the bottle and spilled all the sugar water out. So that wasn't too much good. But these ones, I've got fresh organic, in keeping with our sustainability ideas, and that fits just neatly in on the cup there, on the holder. Now we have to get the other piece, which is our perch and the cup holder, mounted exactly the same way, and it will sit here. I've painted a little bit of red along the front because we are trying to mimic flax flowers and other flowers which have a lot of nectar, and red seems to be the most attractive way of doing it. So I will just fix that, and we'll come back in a second and talk about the bottle and the cup. Right, so now we are just finishing the box, and there's effectively your finished bird feeder housing. However, there's a bit more to this bird feeder thing than meets the eye. And the key to it is in the ability to be able to load it up with sugar water and leave it for a day or 2 days. So I chose to go with the biggest milk bottle I could find, and that is the square Puhoi milk bottle, whole cream or organic, permeate free, homogenised, all the rest of it, and it's quite good milk as well. The idea is that the vacuum that is created in the top of the bottle after some of the sugar water runs out through the nozzle will stop any more going out until some air can be introduced at the bottom. So the length of the nozzle is reasonably important, and its ability to be airtight is critical. Because if you get any air dribbling in around the cap or around the nozzle, then it will just quietly drain out and spill over, and you'll have a big ant, bee, wasp problem. Now, what we're trying to achieve is a milk bottle top with a tube. What I always make them over length and then cut them down to fit later, because not every bird feeder is identical, and they do have a limited life. Ultimately, screwing these on and off, they will split around the edge, and then you've immediately got a leak. So I make half a dozen at a time or more. I've got a bundle in my container here, but the process is first choose what size tube you're going to get. This is from Mitre 10. These are the two smallest sizes. You can buy it by the metre, and a metre goes quite a long way when you're only putting, it's like 100 ml in each one. So you'd be able to make 10 out of a metre. So we start with the bottle top and a hole punch that is the right size to fit your tubing. And if I have a look here, this looks about the right size. So with our hole punch in hand and a stable surface, we can punch a hole in as near to the middle of our bottle top as we can. And that should allow us to put the tube in with a pretty tight fit. Just protrudes through. So there it is, like that. Cut that off with my craft knife. A bit long, and you almost have it. But you can see that it's got a curl on it because this stuff comes on in reels, on rolls, and it's all curved. So how do I get the curve out of it? So I take my piece of tube, and this one I can fit 2 skewers through, and if I do that it actually straightens it out quite nicely. But of course the minute I take it off it curves back up again. So what I can do is I get some boiling water in a container of some kind. Doesn't have to be very much, as long as it stays hot. I drop that into the boiling water, let it heat up quite dramatically, put the skewers through, and then let it cool or run it under the cold tap. And you'll find that when you take the skewers out, it's taken that set out of the tube, and it will be nice and straight. So we've got 2 parts now. We have a cap and a piece of tube. And it's a matter then of how do I fix them together. They use a lot of lubricants in moulding the plastic of caps, and it's very hard to get a glue that will stick. But the one I found is Gorilla Glue. I had to buy a big one of these because I was going through so much of it. I got so excited about it. It does foam up and leaves quite a big residual amount left. So you've got to be careful not to use too much. So it becomes quite easy if you leave the skewers through the tube. Put a little bit of the glue around the inside and around the outside of the cap, and then you've got something you can hold it with, swizzle it round, and it will hold everything in place while the glue sets. Some of these glues take 24 hours. And so it will fit thus. Now I have to get a cup. Now, I haven't got the makings of a cup, but I use a tonic bottle or a ginger ale bottle. Schweppes bottles particularly seem to have the right shape for what I was looking for. And to get a nice round cut on the cup, I fill the bottle with water up the right way, up to this point, and then I can draw with a felt pen around where the water comes up to. And if we pop that in, then we're getting fairly close. And if I then cut it just a smidge off the bottom of that, it'll be perfect. You'll see the paint finish is black with red. The idea is that we are trying to mimic a flax flower or something that Tuis particularly like to visit. Red does seem to be an attractive colour, and in the early stages you'll get the wax eyes, white eyes coming to your bird feeder, and ultimately the Tuis, if there are any around, will watch the white eyes and they'll follow along. So what to do with the paint? Paint is expensive, there's no doubts about it. I went to Mitre 10 and bought a small job pot. I've used about half of it in doing 2 coats on this whole bird feeder, and that was $12.99. So yeah, expensive but not prohibitive. For the red, some years ago I bought a test pot from Rosine's, Guardsman Red. I think it was $2.99 or $5 or something like that. I'm now on my 7th bird feeder and I'm still using that one. Did all these with a little wee narrow paintbrush, like 10mm, 20mm is about all you need, and you can buy those real cheap at the hardware stores. So that's all, pretty much all my bits and pieces for making my bird feeder, except for one thing. When they come along, they've got to have somewhere to land. And in the true spirit of scavenging and making do, my first one I used an old clothes drying rack rail, but then I saw a grove of bamboo as I was driving through Tauranga the other day, and I stopped and got my saw out and sawed a piece off. Why not, indeed? So that will go along the front, across here, and I'll just put a couple of little screws on that. The birds themselves are not heavy, although they come in with a bit of a hiss and a roar. Fix that reasonably well onto the front, and they will have somewhere then that they can hop along. If you want to attract them even more, then you can put a screw up through the end of your perch and put half a Tangelo or half a windfall orange, they don't like lemons so much, on each one, on that one, and one on the other end if you wish. They really go for those. So that's a good attractant to bring them in. And once they've found those, then they'll hop along and look for, get into the sugar water. Now for the nectar, it's really just a matter of mixing some sugar and some water together and throwing in a bit of colouring. It's much easier to do in the bottle. So I have a half cup measure here. I often will mix up 1.5 cups of sugar. Sorry, 1.5 cups, which is 3 half cups. At the moment, when there's other flowers around, not quite so important. So I'm making my mixture 1 cup to 1.5 litres of water. So in goes, always easier to put the sugar in to the dry bottle, because if you get water on the funnel, you end up with a sticky funnel. So we put this about 80% full and screw a lid cap on, and then to mix it, it becomes a matter of doing a bit of shaking. Roll it round, and the key test is when you stand it, then you won't find any settling on the bottom. If you do, then you give it another shake. Top that up to as near to the top as I can get. What I'm trying to avoid is have too big an air bubble. So I have here some Hansel's Pillar Box Red, no, Queen food colouring. Pillar Box Red. And just a few drops of that. All that's needed. This will last months. Into the fridge with that, and you're all ready to go when you next need it, or straight onto the bird feeder. Don't have to mix it up, because the minute you turn it upside down to go in the bird feeder, that pink colour will go right through the syrup, and then you can tell immediately from your living room or wherever you're watching from just how much you've got left in it. So that's about it. I don't think I can really tell you any more. Please have a go. Whatever you do, you can modify the design. It's not patented. I get nothing out of it, but the joy of knowing that people are attracting the native birds and enjoying their antics. That's all for me.